It's so good to be here again on this virtual classroom, and I brought a lot of excitement with me as well today. Thank you so much for being tuned in on this page, and I thank you for subscribing and your comments as well. Okay, so today we'll be considering a wonderful topic, always a wonderful topic, and it's about the cell. Okay, the cell being the building block of life. All right, so this is a simplified learning on cell structure and forms of life. I always like the simplest form of learning because if you're able to get the simplest meaning of a particular topic, you have gotten that topic exactly. Sometimes I believe I just feel big grammars tend to hinder people's learning capacity when it comes to certain topics. Okay, so let's move on. All right. So we're talking about what a cell is. We talk about to look at the structures of the cells, the organs or the organelles found in a cell, and other aspects of a cell. Right. Other forms of a cell. Now this is a typical diagram of a cell. All right, this is how a cell looks like. Obviously, the the middle round form is always the nucleus. Okay, the middle round form is always the nucleus, and then we have other structures around. So this is a typical diagram of a cell. Okay, so let's go move on to know what a cell is. Now, a cell is the smallest unit of life. I wanted to imagine, I want to imagine how a building is. Imagine how a building is being built up. All right. Now you find out that a building has so many structures to it. A typical house has so many structures. It has the roof, the decking, the foundation. But in this house, there's also blocks, right? These builders makes use of blocks to build this house, isn't it? Yes, that is what a cell is. A cell is those building blocks that makes what that house to stand. Okay, so funny enough, when you look at a house, you might not see the blocks. That doesn't mean that those blocks are not there. All right, that's how we are. We human beings are like a house. Okay, and what makes us to be what we are physically is as a result of cells. So cells are the smallest building blocks in every living thing. Okay, in every living thing. I remember that cells cannot be seen with our eyes. We have to make use of microscope, certain electronic microscope for us to be able to view what a cell is. That is why it is called the smallest. It is called the smallest unit. All right. So we can also say it is the building block of all living things. Okay. So a cell also can work alone or it can work together to form tissues, organs, and systems. Okay, so the key point here is without cells, there is no life. Now let's totally talk about cells working alone or working together to form tissues, organs, and systems. Now, there's a picture I have here. Okay, now this picture is telling us about, or is rather showing us the visual arrangement of what cells when they work alone and when they work together. Okay, now if you look down here, you see that this is a cell. It is quite small, isn't it? You see the shape of a cell. It is what? Quite small. I want to talk about cells that work on their own. We're talking about certain organisms like your glina, your amoebas. Amoeba is a cell that works on its own. All right. So if you view an amoeba under a microscope, you find out that an amoeba looks exactly like a cell. You can see the nucleus in the amoeba. The amoeba does not have hand, does not have legs, does not have eyes, does not have head. There is no form to an amoeba. All right. So when you look at an amoeba, it has the exact features of a cell. So we call such an organism a unicellular organism. It has just one cell. We look into that as we go on. All right. So right here we have cell as the smallest what form of life. Okay. Now if you move forward, now you find out that this tissue has more than one cells. You find out that this tissue is made up of what cells. Okay. You see the shapes there. These are what cells that came together to form a tissue. All right. Okay. Take for example. Okay, let's just move on first. I'll show you a visual example of what we mean by a tissue and all. So these tissues come together to form an organ. All right, in this case, a liver, and then an organ comes together to form a system. Okay, so now look up here. Let's consider another diagram over here. I believe I kept. Yes, this is the diagram I'm looking for here. Okay, so now you find out that these are cells. We have the red blood cells that make our blood to be red. We have the white blood cells that fight against foreign bodies and fight against germs. We also have the blood platelets, all right, that's responsible for blood clotting. All right, when we get injured, that particular thing that covers our wound with time is done by what the blood platelet. Now these are what cells that are found inside the blood. These are the three cells that are found inside the blood. We also have blood plasma also. They are the cells that are being what found in the blood. Now these cells, they come together, all right, they come together to make up to form what we call what the red bone marrow. What we call bone marrow. Your marrow is called a tissue. Your bone marrow is a tissue, all right, because what it is a combination of more than one cell, all right. It is a combination of more than one cell. Now, this your bone marrow then comes together as well to form your bone. Your bone is an organ. Now, science defines a bone as a strong organ in the body. All right, so your bone is an organ, all right, and that your bone then comes together with other bones to make up of what? To make up the skeletal system. I see how it is now. So remember, it's always from a cell to a tissue, from a tissue to an organ, from an organ to a system. Do you understand? Like as in this case, we have the blood cells, the red blood cell, white blood cell, and the blood platelets that comes together to form the tissue, which is the bone marrow, and the bone marrow comes together to form the bone, which is an organ, and the bone what forms the system, which is called the skeletal system. So let's go back to what we were discussing before we came here. Okay, so this is what the explanation of a cell working together. So when cells work together, they are called multicellular cells. They come together to achieve a particular goal. Okay, they come together to achieve a particular goal. All right. So now we have it that the key point is without cells, there is no life. All right. Just as without blocks, you cannot have a house. Because what do you want to use to create the walls in the house? It's impossible. Even the foundations require blocks. The decking in every story building you put up, there are deckings. Now this decking also require what? Blocks. All right. Even the roofing too. It is on the blocks that the roof is being what put in place. So you find out that if there is no block, there's no building block, there's no house. All right. Same thing with this. Okay, with the human body. If there is no cell, there is no human being. Okay, because even our eyes are made up of cells. More than 1 billion cells are found in our eyes. They come together to what create what tissues in our eyes that creates what our eyes that are what the organs. So they come together to they work as a team to achieve certain purposes. I sometimes when I teach in my classroom, all right, my classroom, I always try to make use of this particular example that always make them laugh. Funny enough, okay, I'll tell them that a cell is like what water in a soup, in a pot of soup, all right, or like they are like the different ingredients in a pot of soup. If there is no water, or if there is no egusi, if there is no oil, if there is no maggi, if those things are not there, there will be no soup. That's how cells are. All right. So let's move forward. So the cell as a living unit of organisms. Let's talk about how the cell is a living unit of organisms. So we have it that all living things are made up of cells. Even plants. Plants are made up of cells. Your mosquitoes have cells. Scorpions, they have cells. Earthworms have cells. Even bacteria that you cannot see, they have cells. All right. Even the that's a mold that eats up your bread has cells. Okay, they are all living organisms. Do you understand? Even the liver fluke that contaminates your water, they are what? They all have cells. All right. So we said cells over here. We also said that cells perform essential activities like one, eating, two, breathing, and three, producing. So they make more cells. So if in case you're being asked in an exam, or anybody just ask you a random question, possibly you found yourself amongst other elites, other biology elites, and you're being asked what activities cells do. All right. So your answer should be cells they eat, that they feed, cells they breathe, and they reproduce. When we talk about eating, we talk about the ability of each cell to be able to accumulate nutrients from its environment in order to what keep itself alive and carry out other activities, other cellular activities. Now, when you look at a typical cell here, you find out that there are so many things here. Okay, we'll still look at I have another perfect diagram that tells us how cells feed too. Now you see this diagram over here. You find out that there are structures here that helps cells to feed. Like one of them is this vacuole you see over here. This vacuole what contains water and nutrients. Now this other the ribosomes, all right, the ribosomes as some may call it, they also what produce proteins. Now cells they feed. That's just the bottom line of everything I'm saying here. They also feed or to keep alive. Remember when we learned about living things, we all agree that all living things what they feed. So cells are also living parts of your body. Now sometimes there are cases where doctors may take out your blood. They may use an injection to bring out a little of your blood. When they place it immediately under a microscope, you find out that the cells in your blood they are still moving, they still show life, they are still alive to an extent. But now when you take out someone's blood and you leave it still, like leave it, you don't preserve it under anything, just leave it in a bottle. Possibly after 24 hours, if you place it under a microscope, you find out that the cells do not show any form of life. All right. So cells are also what living structures. So they eat, they also breathe. They take in oxygen. All right. Like using the mitochondria in a cell, they use it what to carry out certain respiratory activities. I'm talking about reproducing. Cells do reproduce. They split themselves, like they reproduce. They create more cells. Now, you have billions and trillions of cells in a human body. It is because what cells are always reproducing. They're always bringing up out more cells in order for us to be able to carry out our activities. Okay, so moving forward, we have forms in which living things exist. All right, we have independent living cells. So these independent living cells are also called the single-celled organisms, or they are called the unicellular organisms. For those of us that are Nigeria, you would mostly see in so many textbooks where they write unicellular organisms. Now, uni is a prefix, and uni simply means one or single. So you can easily say unicellular organisms, or you can say single-celled organisms, or you can also say independent living cells. All right, they are all the same thing. Okay. So there are only two forms of living things. Now, living things only exist in two forms. Number one is what? The unicellular form, which is the single-celled organisms. And number two is the multicellular forms, which is what? The multicellular organisms. Now, the unicellular organisms, they are organisms that have just one cell. They have just one cell. There is no two cells. There are no three cells. There are no four or five cells. They have just one cell. Now they have just one cell. And while the multicellular organisms, they have diverse cells. They have many cells. Like human beings, we are multicellular organisms. In our body, we have more than 1 billion cells in our bodies. In our body, you understand? So we are multicellular. We have so many cells. Why these other ones, which are the amoebas, the parameciums, the euglenias, even volvox, they don't have what diverse cells. All they have is just one cell. That's why you cannot see an amoeba with your ordinary eye, because you cannot see a cell with your mere eyes. All right. So for you to see an amoeba, you have to use a microscope. Okay, so the examples of single-celled organisms, or the example of unicellular organisms, are amoeba, paramecium, euglena, volvox, and I think that is, and others. We have others too. All right. We even have the chlamydomonas. All right. They are all types of single-celled organisms. Now, moving forward, we have good examples here. Very good. Okay. So these are pictures of unicellular organisms. Now, if you notice that, you see these chlamydomonas now, you can see over here that it has a nucleus. That pink ball at the center is its nucleus. Now you see that it has the shape of a cell, just that it only has, the only difference between this chlamydomonas and the normal cell is what? The presence of these antennas, which is their flagellum here. That's these two rope-like structure, these two hair-like structure that came out from the top. But if you look at the other aspects of it, it has a nucleus just like a normal cell. So you see this too. These are nucleus. Same thing. It has a nucleus. It also has cell wall. It has a cytoplasm exactly like a cell. So because they have just one cell, they take the form of that particular cell. They don't have hands. They don't have legs. They take the exact form of that cell, right? So they have one cell and they take the exact form of a cell. This is a paramecium. over here. This is how a yeast looks like. This is an amoeba. Remember, amoebas are always shapeless. They don't have one shape. You can go elsewhere and you find another different shape of an amoeba, but you still notice that it still has what? There is center green like ball. It is the nucleus. It still has the structure of a cell. All right. If you check a typical diagram and the labeling of an amoeba, you find out that you still see your cytoplasm, you still see your nucleus, your nucleolus, your cell membrane, and all that is still found there. And also, this is what your bacterium. Remember that bacteria is when there are more than one. Bacterium is just a single bacteria. So when it is one, it's called a bacterium. When it is more than one, it's called bacteria. And this is how what a bacterium looks like. It still has what a cell-like structure. So right, so these are called what your unicellular organisms. Over as you can see, okay, I had to put it up on the heading. These are what your unicellular organisms or your single-celled organisms. All right, and you find that your amoeba moves over here. I had to write that amoeba moves and eats with your pseudopodia. They are called phosphates. Right, they are tiny, tiny. You see this line, this thick line that runs across the edges of the amoeba. They are called phosphates. Right, these strands, this I don't know if I call them hand-like structures here. They are called phosphates. Okay, the paramecium moves using tiny hairs called the cilia. All right, look at the paramecium. Now you can see that there are tiny hairs round about it. This is called what the cilia. So the paramecium moves using this hair, while the last but not the least, which is the euglena, can photosynthesize like plants. Yes, so euglenas undergo photosynthesis like normal plant animals do. However, if you notice, it looks green, more green than the rest, but undergoes what photosynthesis like a typical plant cell. So what we have now is forms in which living things exist. Now, living things exist in two forms also. They exist as a colony and they exist as a filament. Remember, this subtopic is different from this other subtopic. All right, these are two different forms. Okay, when we talk about these forms, talking about their nature, talking about their structure, how they exist in terms of their structure. So when we talk about the structure of living things has two forms, but over here now, this other forms talks about their existence when they are together. All right, when they are together, like more than one of them being existing together. Now first forms in which living things exist, they exist as a colony and they exist as filament. Mostly it is the cellular form of organisms that exist as colony and filament, though human beings are being seen as a colonial organism, but when talking about cellular form, they're not being evolved as what colonies. Okay, so we have here that what they live as what a colony, right? So some cells group together to form colonies. Remember that colony means when what two or more what species come together to achieve a particular goal. They come together to do a particular thing to achieve a particular goal together. That's what colony is all about. Doing things together to achieve something. All right, to get the best out of something. Okay, so we have examples of cell or examples of organisms that carry out colony, that lives or exists in colony form. We have the volvox. All right, volvox. I have a picture over here that will tell us how a volvox looks like. This is a volvox. Now, when a volvox is alone, this is how it looks like. It looks like a chlamydomonas, but it's not a chlamydomonas. This volvox looks like a chlamydomonas, but it is not chlamydomonas. Please, a volvox is not a chlamydomonas. All right, so this is how a volvox exists. Now this is a single, this one now over here is a single volvox. This is a single volvox, but when they come together, this is how they look like. This is a colony of volvox. So this is how a colony of volvox looks like. They come together this way and they reproduce together, they feed together, they do a lot of things like as a colony like this. So the second one, even amoeba exists as a colony. All right, I let's consider, yes, this is a typical picture of an amoeba existing as a colony. Now each of these diagrams, each of these things are amoebas. So at this point, they had to come together. Possibly where they are, they don't have much water, or maybe there must be an issue. But even if there is none, these organisms they come together in this way. All right, to be able to achieve a particular need. They always come together to achieve a need, to get something done. Okay, so now moving to this point, we have number one, living things what exist as a colony, right? And number two, they exist as a filament. They also exist as what a filament. Now, here you hear filaments, you should be able to remember what thread. Filament organisms they always have a thread-like structure. They always look like threads. All right, like your fungi that eats up bread, and those that you find in gari, they are always in thread-like form. If you use a microscope, you better see that the roots they're trying to take deep is in thread-like form. So some cells form long thread-like chains. That those are called filaments. So example of filaments are your spirogyra. Okay, right? If you've actually seen green plants that grow inside of a gutter or along the walls of a building, those are what volvoxes and spirogyras. All right, those are what spirogyras. So even spirogyras, they exist as what filaments. All right, let's check for let's search out for a spirogyra. Okay, we don't have any. Hopefully, if I would still go and work on. I would still teach us more on this topic, and I'll bring a much more better view. But you can still on your own, out of a show of interest in knowledge and building your knowledge base, just go online and browse out how the Aspire Rojara looks like and how Evolve Works look like, for it to be able to also tell the differences once you're in an exam. Okay, over here we have what some talking about filaments. When what cells are living as filaments, some cells form long thread-like chains. All right, you find such cells inside bread. All right, inside such damp foods. So, example, we have the spirogyra, we have the green algae that forms filaments. Okay, so moving forward, so we have seen these pictures. Let's talk about the cell theory now. There's what we call the cell theory in biology. The cell theory are just three short rules that were stipulated by biologists that existed before us. And we've been using these theories to base our findings in biology for over decades now. Okay, so number we said this the 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 scientists or the biologists that proposed this theory, they are called scientists Claydon, Squan, and Virtual. All right, these are foreign names, so forgive the way I pronounce them. Okay, so these three scientists came up with this what cell theory, and the first cell theory says all living things are made up of cells. Please don't ever forget this theory. All living things are made of cells. We are all made of cells. Our saliva has cells in them. Our eyes has cells. Our blood has cells. Our skin has cells. Our liver has cells. That's why whenever you smoke or you drink, they would say the alcohol you took or the person took has destroyed the cells of the person's liver. So everybody, all living things, be it plants, be it animals, how they can walk and talk and breathe and eat and all, they are all made up of cells. Number two, the cell is the basic unit of life. The cell is the basic unit of life, meaning it is the smallest and the most important unit of life. It's the most important thing in your body. Okay, the cell is the most important and the most basic unit of life. Number three is all cells come from pre-existing cell. All cells come from pre-existing cells. There are no cells that just magically forms in your body. They are all every cell that is being formed in their billions. They are being formed because but they were pre-existing cells, like cells that existed before, and they decided to what you know spread and reproduce to get more cells. All right, so these are the three major cell theories in biology. These are the shortest form of it. If you go to textbooks and notebooks, you find out that these things they have a lot of notes on that people are writing and writing and writing. But I just had to bring out the major points that should be considered in this class for easy understanding. All right, so it will not look so ambiguous to anybody or to anyone. So the main points here are number one, all living things are made of cells. Number two, the cell is the basic unit of life, is the most important unit of life. And number three, all cells came from pre-existing cells. Just as we came from our parents that existed, all cells also comes from pre-existing cells. So let's see how these cells come from pre-existing cells. Okay. Well, I would have loved to show us a diagram I I had. All right. But let's still move on. Let's still move on. Okay. Let's still move on. So okay. Said all cells come from pre-existing cells. Now, if you look at how amoebas are being formed, you find even normal cells, how they are being formed, you find out that at a point there's what we call the parent cell. The parent cell, what at a point starts or dividing, and when it divides, the nucleus divides along with it, the cytoplasm divides to form the daughter cells. All right, so that is why we said all cells come from pre-existing cells. Pre-existing means cells that have already been existing before. Okay, so moving on, we have cell structure and their components. So there are three major structures of cells. All right, and we have so many components of a cell. Okay, the first structure of a cell is what? The cell membrane. Now this is this plasma membrane is also called the cell membrane. All right, it's also called the cell membrane. Now it is actually the cell membrane is what? This outermost thin layer that you are seeing that is surrounding the cell, that is protecting the cell. That is called what? A cell membrane. So it surrounds the cell and controls what enters and leaves the cell. All right, that's for the cell membrane. Okay, so we have the cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm said the jelly-like substance. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance, and it holds all cell parts in place. Now let's see how it really looks like. And this is, I see all these parts in this plant cell where there are dots, all these dots you're seeing there, all these dots that are over this plant cell is called the cytoplasm. All right, every dot you are seeing here is called the cytoplasm of the cell. Now these dots in real life sense, or when placed under a microscope, these dots are actually liquids. Okay, the cytoplasm is like a liquid, it's like a jelly like liquid, you get. So yes, these dot you see everywhere, they are all called cytoplasm. Okay, so moving on, we have what I said the cytoplasm. It's what holds, it's a jelly-like substance that holds all cell parts in place. Now you find out that all these things you're seeing here, both this one here that is a rough reticulum, the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and even but the food vacuoles and every other thing, they are being held by the what? The cytoplasm. They are being held by the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is like more like the liquid form of it that carries what? All these structures and all these things you're seeing here. Okay, so we have the nucleus. The nucleus is the control center, and the nucleus contains the DNA, just like our brain contains every other aspect of us, and also the computer AI controls certain things. All right, same thing, same way the nucleus controls every other thing, all right, that is being done in the cell. Okay, so these are the three major words sites of a plant. It also contains DNA. All right, that's for the nucleus. The nucleus also contains DNA. The nucleus also contains DNA. So looking at this diagram now, looking at this diagram, you can find so many things here. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum that is being used to control lipids. Okay, so we have so many of them. We have the vacuole here. The vacuole is used to store water and nutrients. This plasma membrane is a very light, flexible layer, right, that protects the cell from its outer environment, and it also determines what comes into the cell and what leaves the cell. We have the chromatin here. The chromatin is what's also okay, the chromatin also what helps in the RNA passage. Okay, it helps to what align the RNA. It has a lot of functions, but one of it is it helps in what the passage of RNA and proteins. Now we have the main nucleus that comprises of both the nuclear pores, the chromatin, and all. The nucleus is what's more like the DNA house of the cell. It contains the DNA, which the DNA means the oxyribonucleic acid, and also contains the RNA, and the RNA means ribonucleic acid. These ribosomes over here, these ribosomes, they are responsible for what? For making proteins. And the mitochondria here, mitochondria is called the powerhouse of the cell because it is here that energy is being produced or made. The Golgi bodies also, the Golgi bodies, they actually sort and they sort out proteins and lipids. All right, especially those that will be sent out of the cell soon, and the ones that does the sorting of those proteins and those lipids. We have the lysosome. The lysosome does what they call excretion. It takes out unwanted material from the soil. All right, anything that is unwanted from the soil. Sorry, when any material that is unwanted from the cell, rather, it takes it out. All right. So we have the centriole. The centriole is what contains the chromosome. Okay, it is what helps in cell division. This centriole helps in cell division. All right. So it always makes sure that the chromosome they are complete in number before the cell divides, so that each of the cells that are being divided will have the exact or rather we have the complete number of chromosomes they should have. Okay, the nuclear pores also has a lot of work to do. It also does a lot of things, and these things it does includes making sure that this chromatin is well arranged. Okay, it also helps to repair damaged DNA. This nuclear pores, yes, this nuclear pores helps to repair damaged DNA. We have the polyribosomes. The polyribosomes, what it does actually is to allow more than one ribosome. Means it allows multiple ribosomes to function at the same time. So we have the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The rough endoplasmic reticulum, it produces protein for what the endo membranes. All right, produces for the endo membranes. Okay, so moving forward, we have cell organelles and their functions. Yes, we talk about the mitochondria. Mitochondria is the power of the cell. This is what the energy production of the cell. Talk about the chloroplast. And remember, as I said, the chloroplast is only found in plants, and the chloroplast is used to make food alone using sunlight. It makes food using sunlight. The ribosomes, they build proteins. The vacuole stores water, food, or waste. The cell wall, all right, provides shape and what protection. Remember, the cell wall is only found in plants. What animal cell has is the cell membrane, but they don't have cell wall. It's only plants that have cell wall, so it will be what strong and rigid. Okay. So you have the difference between plant and animal cells. Number one, plant cell has cell wall, but animal cells do not have cell wall. Number two, chloroplast. Chloroplasts are only found in plant cells. Okay, so the plant cells has cell wall and also has the chloroplast, while the animal cells do not have cell wall and the animal cells do not have chloroplast. So the in terms of shape, the plant cell is rectangular in shape, and in terms of the food vacuole, the plant cell has a very large food vacuole compared to the animal cell. The plant cell has a very huge food vacuole. All right. Okay, you can call it the vacuole size, you can call it mass vacuole, call it food vacuole, but it has what the highest size of vacuole. All right. So let's continue. Let's move on. So what are the similarities between plant and animal cells? Now the major similarity between plant and animal cells is this. They both have a cell membrane. Remember, it's only a plant cell that has a cell wall, but the both of them still have a cell membrane. So they both have cytoplasm. Yes, both the animal cell and the plant cell have what we call the cytoplasm. And then thirdly, they both have what nucleus. They both have the nucleus. They both have the nucleus. So also number two, both of them perform life activities like eating, breathing, and reproducing. So both the plant cells and the animal cells carry out life activities, and that is what breathing, eating, and reproduction. So number 12. Sorry, and the conclusion. Sorry, that I said number 12. The in conclusion, we're going to have a recap of all that we've learned so far in this particular class, all right, in this particular session. So number one, we understand that the cell is the basic unit of life. All right, I explained that. If you don't understand, please you can revisit, you can review this lesson for better understanding. All right, so the number two says cells can exist alone or in groups. So when they exist alone, they are called unicellular organisms, and when they exist in groups, they are called multicellular organisms. And the last is what understanding cells helps us learn how living things grow, survive, and reproduce. So if you in our classes ahead, we'll still talk about what specific for and cells and their functions in such environments. So we understand indeed, all right, we understand indeed what's cells benefit to living things, to their growth and to their survival and also reproduction. So, and this is it, guys. This is all we have for today. So, please, if you have any questions, drop at the comment section. You can still revisit the lessons if you're confused at any point. Okay. So, I believe that we all understood this class, and I believe that we all really enjoyed this class. So see you in my next video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, and also don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section. Thank you very much.